Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly break down how Solskjaer won the tactical battle over Mourinho as Manchester United defeated Spurs 2-1. But before we do that, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So now, when we do look at the board 4-2-3-1 and 4-2-3-1, how did Manchester United get the better of Spurs? When we do look at it and we see how both sides are looking to approach the game, there were key aspects as to how they were going to attack. With Solskjaer, you did have Rashford and Daniel James out in the wider roles, and that was key because Spurs' weakness right now from a defensive aspect is their fullbacks. You have James running at Vertonghen, and down on the left-hand side, given the way that Mourinho's side has evolved under him, basically what they do is they have Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld, and Sanchez shift into a back three with possession, and then have Serge Aurier pushing forward to try and limit his defensive duties. So with Aurier pushing forward, that does leave space for Rashford to break down that left channel, and that's what Solskjaer wanted to exploit. He wanted to get Rashford in a position where he can either run into space behind Aurier, run at Aurier, who is culpable of conceding penalties, or running at Davinson Sanchez, who himself is culpable to make errors. So that was how they want to go about it. They had those two breaking, they wanted those two to run at the fullbacks. You have Fred and McTominay in central midfield, trying to exert their physical dominance in terms of dominating that central area. And that was basically how United wants to go about the game. Whereas for Spurs, they struggle in central areas because they don't have a genuine passer that can play those penetrative balls in between the lines. Harry Winks does retain possession, but he switches balls out into wider areas, and he plays a lot of short passes. And Sissoko is more of a ball carrier than that genuine defensive splitting passer. So they were going to always struggle to find those balls in between the lines unless United did open up, which they didn't do here. So it would be interesting to see how Alli would go about it. Often like Lingard making forward runs into advanced areas, and that often saw Harry Kane drop off into deeper positions to pick up the ball ahead of the midfield bank, and that would see Son make direct runs across the defensive line and saw Lucas Moura running across Ashley Young. So with Son, Alli, and Lucas Moura making those runs in behind, it made sense for Kane to drop off into those areas because he wouldn't be able to get the ball around the penalty box as he would prefer, or in the penalty box. So that was one way that Spurs were looking to attack and approach the game. And the other aspect was getting Aurier in behind Rashford. So it was a double-edged sword. It's either Aurier pushes forward and beyond Rashford and presents Spurs' attackers into key areas, or they get burned and Rashford is able to exploit that space and either get the better of Aurier, Sanchez, or the entire Spurs backline. But when we look at it as a whole, like I said, they're both playing similar systems, so it's interesting to see how they would go about the game without the ball. When we look at United, they did drop off the two banks of four, as did Spurs, but what they did was that they had Greenwood and Lingard ahead of Sissoko and Winks to ensure that those passes couldn't be played into them. So as Spurs kind of somewhat shift into that three-man backline with Vertonghen possibly a bit higher, they couldn't get Toby Alderweireld or Davinson Sanchez to play balls into Sissoko or Winks. When we saw Greenwood step into the path of Toby Alderweireld, we would see Lingard run across Winks to close him down. That would see Fred step to Sissoko actually, and then we would see McTominay occupying the space of Dele Alli. So that was one way to go about it. They could have Lingard step out to Sanchez, and even if Lingard stepped off to Sanchez and they didn't have a player stepping into Winks, which was often not the case. So if you have Lingard stepping into the path of Sanchez, you would want Greenwood stepping towards Winks to ensure that he can't get on the ball. But nonetheless, even if he did stick towards Alderweireld, that's a risky pass for Sanchez to play, and that was possibly what United wanted. But in that sequence, you do have Fred again sticking towards Sissoko, because now when Lingard is supposed to be on Sissoko, he has to push forward. So you do want Fred to step to Sissoko. There was one instance where he stepped late and Sissoko had time to play a pass beyond Rashford into the path of Aurier pushing forward. But for the most part, Solskjaer wanted Fred to step to Sissoko. And then in that sequence as well, you have McTominay tracking the run of Dele Alli. We didn't see Alli get the ball in between the lines like we have during Mourinho's short reign thus far. And that's because of how United did approach the game without the ball. When we look at Spurs, it was somewhat similar. They also also did drop off the two banks of forward without the ball. Like I should have mentioned with United, the wider players are closing out the fullbacks. And here you would see Lucas Moura and Son closing Wan-Bissaka and Ashley Young. And you'd have Kane and Dele Alli ahead of Fred and McTominay. So Kane would be ahead of Fred. You would have Alli ahead of McTominay. And sometimes you would see both of them press. And when they both press the center backs, that does ignite Winks and Sissoko to step forward. And on the rare occasion where you would see Alli step out to Lindelof, that would attract Winks into the path of McTominay. And with that being said, you'd have Sissoko drop off a bit deeper because they're not going to get the pass into Fred. And Sissoko would shift over to deal with Jesse Lingard. And that's how both sides kind of went about their pressing. Similar systems, not trying to allow the midfielders to get on the ball and forcing teams to go long. So when we really do look at it, like I said, the avenues to goal were pretty simple and both managers should have been aware of it. So when we look to United, a lot of their attacking play, as mentioned, did stem down the wider areas. And it was interesting to see Mourinho not possibly adjust this and play a bit more conservative. Perhaps he could have had Lucas Moura dropping off a bit deeper to help out Aurier. And when we did see Aurier push forward, Sissoko did cover his position. But Rashford was still able to get chances on the break. And on the right-hand side, we did see them cope with Daniel James a bit better because they did have Son dropping off to help out Vertonghen. And if need be, Alderweireld could shift over, and he does offer a more reliable defensive shield than Davinson Sanchez. But the manner in which United were able to get the game going didn't really stem from a natural pattern because no real chances were created in that opening sequence. When we look at it, it is Fred on the ball, and he does play a poor pass that hits off Sissoko, misses a narrow Greenwood dropping off deeper, and falls into the path of Davinson Sanchez, who does a poor job of dealing with the loose ball and ends up presenting it to Lingard, who takes the ball into the left channel. Sanchez does a good job here and holds off Lingard, but he pokes the ball into the path of Rashford, who is now able to run towards goal. Winks does come across, but he's unable to block the Rashford shot. And frankly, this is a poor goalkeeping error from Gazzaniga, who should save this shot at his near post, and he conceded, and that's how United were able to go ahead. And frankly, it did shift the game. But when we look to United's next chance, it did stem about 15 minutes later, and it was on the opposite flank, and it's Spurs' inability to press as a unit that saw them get into this position, and United should have possibly doubled their lead here. What we end up seeing is Harry Maguire being pressed by Kane, and rather than trying to play the ball long, he plays it back to De Gea, which forces Kane to step towards him. De Gea plays the ball into the path of Lindelof, which does attract Alli. But right now, what we end up seeing is McTominay dropping off deeper to receive the ball from Lindelof, and Winks doesn't step quick enough. So now we have McTominay, who is able to turn with the ball, and you end up seeing a narrow Son and Winks ahead of him. Now what happens is Greenwood drops off deeper to the left of Winks to receive the splitting pass from McTominay, and he slides the ball out wide to Daniel James, who now has the freedom to run at Vertonghen. Rather than looking to cut in, he cuts on the outside, and he delivers a cross that bypasses Alderweireld and falls into the path of Lingard, who is running across Sanchez. Lingard holds the ball off, and Greenwood, after linking play with Daniel James, makes a run towards the box to receive the tee off from Lingard, and he forces Gazzaniga into a save. But that is a Spurs error from their pressing. It didn't happen often, but again, we see the fact that they're able to break down the right-hand side and have the wide player against the fullback, and frankly, that was a quality United chance. Shortly after that, we see United try to exploit that right-hand side, and we do see some positional changes. We have Son and Lucas Moura swapping flanks, and we saw Lingard move to the left-hand side with Rashford playing in more of a central zone. So how that play starts is that you end up seeing Maguire ahead of Harry Kane playing a diagonal ball into the path of Lingard. So now you have Lingard ahead of Aurier, and you see Rashford drifting laterally into that zone to pull out Sanchez. So what they try to do is play a quick 1-2 to bypass Sanchez and Aurier, but Aurier does a good job of blocking the return pass into Lingard. However, when Sanchez receives the loose ball, he ends up playing a poor pass into the path of Son that is dispossessed, And we see Rashford play the ball back into the path of Ashley Young. And what Young does now is that he cuts in centrally and he plays a pass in between Son and Sissoko to find Lingard in between Sanchez and Aurier. And Lingard's able to gain a yard on Sanchez and bend his effort inches wide of the net. But again, they try down that flank. Spurs' right side, this time Sanchez once again making another defensive error, and it almost leads to a United goal. But when you really break down United in that first half, they were getting Rashford into key areas. They were trying to exploit Sanchez and Aurier. And frankly, besides that, we did have Rashford on 2 other occasions dropping off deeper, forcing Gazaniga to push the ball off the crossbar. And he did have one opportunity in the box with his standing leg where he curled an effort on goal that forced the keeper into a save. So when we analyze how Spurs were able to create chances, a lot of it stemmed down the same zone, with Aurier breaking beyond Rashford and Sissoko dropping off into that channel to provide cover in case United were looking to break on the counterattack. We also saw Kane dropping off into midfield zones to receive the ball, and that would allow Alli, Son, and Lucas Moura to break into the box to provide a goal-scoring threat, with Kane breaking in slowly after that. This was an alternative route to goal given the fact that Spurs do lack a creative ball-playing midfielder in their starting lineup without Christian Eriksen, and often we do see Kane isolated up front, not receiving the ball in key areas in the final third where he can be the poacher that we know he is. So without Kane's ruthless finishing, he did play as a provider, and we saw it early on when he dropped off into midfield and located Lucas Moura running off Ashley Young. So Kane received the ball in his half, clipped the diagonal ball into that zone. Lucas Moura was able to beat Ashley Young down the byline, and he delivered a low cross into the box that did bypass Lindelof, but Maguire was able to clear his lines. Shortly after that, from a quick free kick, we have Sissoko splitting McTominay and Fred to find Harry Kane, and what we end up seeing there is Aurier running off Rashford to receive a diagonal ball in that right channel, which pulls out Young, and we end up seeing Son and Lucas Moura making darts in between the center backs, and we have Dele Alli running off Wan-Bissaka. However, the cross into the box was cleared by Maguire, and that once again goes to highlight the issues that Spurs were having in that first half. Aurier was getting beyond Rashford, but there were 2 scenarios that often occurred. If Aurier got into a good position, he would deliver a quality cross and no Spurs players would attack it. And if they did get into good areas, often Aurier's cross was mishit or simply poor. When we look to another example, it's Sissoko winning the ball in midfield and clipping it over Rashford into the path of Aurier, which pulls out Young. We end up seeing Dele Alli making a run in between the center backs and Kane making a run in between Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka. So Spurs attackers did get into a good position, and Aurier did deliver a cross into his teammate, but it was fizzed in too hard to Dele Alli. He was unable to control it once it bounced off his chest, and United were able to clear their lines there. The goal, however, did stem from Spurs' pressing, but it also again highlighted the fact that Aurier was able to find space in behind. So when we look to that example, we see Lucas Moura pressing Ashley Young, Kane pressing Maguire, and Alli stepping into the path of Lindelof. That does see Maguire play the pass into McTominay, who is stepped to by Harry Winks, and McTominay plays a first-time pass into the path of Son. Son instantly locates Kane ahead of the center backs, and Alli makes an intelligent run across the center backs into the path of Maguire and Ashley Young, and we end up seeing Kane making a run to the outside of Lindelof, but having a shot blocked by McTominay. Kane ends up picking up the ball in the left channel and pulling it back to Son at the edge of the box, where he's able to skip past James, Lingard, and McTominay to break into the 6-yard area, but he's closed off by Lindelof. So when he's closed off by Lindelof, rather than forcing a shot, he pulls the ball back into the path of Vertonghen. Daniel James does come across, but he comes late, and Vertonghen delivers a cross in between Fred, who did drop in for Lindelof, and Maguire, and Fred ensures that Kane can't get onto it, but he nods the ball into the path of a free Serge Aurier ahead of Ashley Young, who was tucked in narrow. Aurier's shot is saved by De Gea, and the rebound ends up falling to Dele Alli, who takes his first touch in between Young and Fred, and he's able to fire his effort past De Gea. It does highlight Spurs' pressing and their ability to find Aurier again in key areas in behind Ashley Young and Rashford, and that's how Spurs were able to equalize. But like I said, in that first half, United's wide players did play a key role. Aurier breaking forward was pivotal as well, but a lot of the play stemmed down that solitary zone, and that was the key theme in that opening half. So when we look at the second half, the match followed a similar theme, with United going back ahead within minutes, and it was a simple quick free kick from Young that did fall to Marcus Rashford, and he was able to skip past Aurier with ease, and with Sissoko coming across to cover, Rashford went on the outside of the Spurs midfielder before he was clipped down in the box, and Rashford was able to convert a penalty. United did find more space in Spurs' midfield following that goal, with Greenwood and Lingard often dropping off into space to the right of Sissoko to receive the ball, and there were times when Rashford would hug the touchline to pull out Aurier, and we would see Lingard making darting runs into that space, with Sissoko being forced to track him, and you expected United to continue the onslaught from there. However, Spurs stuck to the manner in which they were going, and that was down the right-hand side with Aurier running off Rashford, and they did press a bit higher. We did see Kane and Alli looking to press the center backs more aggressively. They tried to press from goal kicks, but it never really manifested into anything. But the high pressing did force United into some errors. We had Maguire slide the ball out to Ashley Young, and we did see Lucas Moura press and dispossess the United left back, and he drove down that right channel before delivering a cross into the box, which did see Alli run across Lindelof for the ball to fall to Son ahead of Wan-Bissaka, and Son was able to cut in on Wan-Bissaka and Lindelof, but his shot was blocked. Shortly after that, we ended up seeing, with United dropping off into more of a midfield five, Wings getting time on the ball to clip it over a narrow Rashford into the path of Aurier, and with Aurier breaking forward, he delivered a low cross into the box once again, and we saw Alli running across the center backs, and it ended up seeing Wan-Bissaka being forced to clear his line so that Harry Kane couldn't get onto the end of it at the far post. Mourinho did turn to his bench, bringing on Christian Eriksen for Lucas Moura and bringing on Ndombele for Winks. Eriksen did drop off into more central areas from the right-hand side, but United coped with that well. Whenever Eriksen tried to drop off into midfield, he was harried by Fred, and you would see Alli move out into the wider zones or try to drop off into midfield to get on the ball, and McTominay stuck to him. We did see United create chances in that second half, more so in transition, and a lot of it resulted with Daniel James receiving the ball ahead of Alderweireld and Vertonghen, and he forced Gazaniga into some saves, but the general approach of their game, which did see the wider players running at the fullbacks, didn't really manifest in that second half, and they struggled to get in behind Spurs' defense. Solskjaer ended up turning to his bench. He brought on Andreas Pereira for Greenwood, and that did see Rashford move up front. It shifted Daniel James to the left and Pereira to the right, and the change never really made sense because Aurier was still getting forward, and rather than having Daniel James, who was doing a good job against Vertonghen, or at least getting into good goal-scoring opportunities in that second half, continue down that side, he put Pereira there. Pereira doesn't really offer you anything in terms of creativity or goal-scoring chances, so it would make sense that the one thing that he is good at, and that's neutralizing the opposing player, would make sense if he did end up moving to the left-hand side and sitting on Aurier to stop those runs, and then continue having James run down the right. But besides that, there was a time when McTominay did spin away from Kane and Eriksen did step in to dispossess him. Eriksen quickly switched the ball out to Son ahead of Wan-Bissaka, and Son dropped the ball off to Eriksen, who was able to clip a sweeping ball over the back four into Aurier again, free ahead of Ashley Young, but he could only fire a tame effort on goal. Luke Shaw and Lo Celso came into the game, game. Lo Celso didn't offer much. Luke Shaw came on to move finally to that side to stop Aurier, which ended up seeing Andreas Pereira move into more of a central role and James back to the right-hand side, which is Solskjaer finally realizing that perhaps he needs to have someone sit on Aurier. And the remaining seconds of that second half, Rashford could have killed off the game on the counterattack, and Alderweireld chipped the ball into Alli in the box in the dying minutes of stoppage time, and he fired a tame effort on goal. When you break down that game as a whole, it was very simple to assess. Rashford and Daniel James were supposed to be the key players, and Rashford maximized the space that Aurier gave him, and United did make the most out of Aurier and Sanchez's ability to consistently make mistakes in the back line. Whereas for Spurs, it didn't really make sense in terms of going forward. It's been a structural issue and a personnel issue that they've encountered throughout this season, but they did find space down that side for Aurier, and they perhaps could have stole a point here if they played a bit better, but they struggled to string passes together, and when Aurier got into good positions, the front four just couldn't connect with the right back. But let me know what you guys think. Does this result say anything about Jose Mourinho and Spurs, and does it make you question whether they can make a surge for the top four? And what about United? Another big win for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer against a top side. Does he deserve more time at United? Can he push them into the top four as well? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And like I said, if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.